And a day after the publication of the story, Dan Snyder releasing a statement, and I quote, "The behavior described in yesterday's Washington Post article has no place in our franchise or society. This story has strengthened my commitment to setting a new culture and standard for our team, a process that began with the hiring of Coach Rivera earlier this year. Beth Wilkinson and her firm are empowered to do a full, unbiased investigation and make any and all requisite recommendations. Upon completion of her work, we will institute new policies and procedures and strengthen our human resources infrastructure to not only avoid these issues in the future, but most importantly, create a team culture that is respectful and inclusive of all." Close quote. Here's a sampling of some of the reaction to the story, starting with its co-author, Liz Clark of the Washington Post.
None of this should ever have happened twice. It should never have happened, really. But if you had a competent, well-staffed, well-funded HR department, very vigorous, it would just take one episode of one scout saying something inappropriate or sending an appalling text, to say, do this again and you're gone.
When you see something like this, it drags us right back to the 80s or maybe the 50s. And, the NFL, I've always thought, is kind of that last bastion of male supremacy. And maybe it's the last bastion of Animal House.
So when the evil is so top down, when there's no established HR department, and when you don't believe that the people at the highest levels are going to care or do anything, you have absolutely no recourse. And that's what's so pervasive about all of this. This happens so often, and because it's an industry that people want to work in, because it's so male predominant, and because so often the top levels are not invested in making it a good work environment, you have nowhere to go.
Said by Sarah Spain there. And joining us now, NFL reporter Kimberley A. Martin. And Kimberly knows this franchise so well, a Washington Post beat writer covering that team before joining ESPN. So Kimberly, really interesting in the fact that this statement by Dan Snyder didn't come out immediately. And frankly, Coach Ron Rivera, who's new to the organization, has been the strongest voice to speak out against what happened and the path forward. I'm wondering what stood out to you about this paragraph released today from Dan Snyder.
I was shocked that, given the chance to actually speak, that there was no shame, no embarrassment, no apology, no accountability, no ownership from Daniel Snyder. And the idea that we're committed to changing the culture of this franchise, as you can see, based on us hiring Ron Rivera as our coach. Nothing against Ron Rivera. Players love him. People in the league love him, but this isn't solely his mess. He just got here 6 months ago. This falls on Dan Snyder. And the fact that he seems to be acting as though these are new allegations or these are things that haven't been rumored about for a very long time. It all falls under his watch. It's his mess, and it's his mess to clean up and own.
Yeah, we can't forget the cheerleading scandal of a couple of years ago involving
2 years
this
ago,
franchise. Yeah. Right, 2018. Meanwhile, what kinds of questions could there be, Kimberly, around this internal investigation, given that the firm was hired by the Washington franchise to do its own investigation, and the NFL, which would seem to be an impartial entity, is not even conducting an investigation until after Washington's is completed?
Yeah, Dan Snyder wants everyone to believe that this is going to be an unbiased investigation. My question is, what has this franchise done to deserve the benefit of the doubt when it comes to policing itself, when it comes to being transparent? What has Dan Snyder, as owner for over 20 years, what has he done in his stead to deserve the benefit of the doubt? I feel like this was an opportunity for the league to say, you know what? Between the cheerleading scandal, between the name change issue, between now this Washington Post bombshell, there's enough here where, you know what, Dan Snyder, you haven't given us a choice. And I think the public would feel a little bit better about it actually being unbiased and feel better about it actually giving the appearance of impartiality. Because if Washington hired this lawyer, we wonder, are the findings going to be released to the public? Will we know exactly what's happened? Because people have been disciplined in this organization, and we don't know what the discipline has been behind the scenes. And I think transparency is needed here.
And you bring up sort of a collective series of events, Kimberly, because all of this, of course, comes after the long-awaited name change with Dan Snyder opposed for years. To be clear, he's not named specifically in the Washington Post allegations, but nonetheless, what impact does this potentially have on his ownership of the team in the foreseeable future?
Well, it raises the question of should he still be owner? It raises the question of how long has this been a toxic environment for employees and people who have been reporters that have covered the team. The fact that Snyder, at this point, these are not new things, and you would like to feel as though change is coming, that this is not okay, that this is not going to be swept up. This story is not going to be swept under the rug. I think the cheerleading story, you thought that should have been a much bigger deal, and it wasn't. We moved on, and now we're all surprised by this. So I think the question of whether he deserves to be owner and whether the league should step in, I think that's a key issue going forward.
And here, Ron Rivera, who survived a scandal regarding his owner with the Panthers, finds himself really smack in the middle of all of this with Washington. Kimberley A. Martin, we know it's been a busy day for you. Thanks for joining us.